Hi there, everybody. My name is Kate, and welcome to my channel, Trinergy Awakens Naturally. And of course, just as I start, my little tuxedo cat is getting busy and trying to scratch my behind. So pardon me while I very delicately move him on. We got other priorities right now, besides him ousting me out of his chair. So I wanted to bring to you, we're past the Thanksgiving holiday in the United States. Happy holidays if you believe. I believe in magic year-round. However, it seems like it's more believable this time of year as we go into the holidays of Christmas, etc. Whatever you celebrate every day. Because I believe, whether I'm wearing a Santa hat or not. What I want to talk to you about today is perception, which is wonderful at this time of year whenever we're believing in all kinds of fanciful Santa Claus, and we're believing in the Grinch too pretty hard. I want to talk to you about how it is that we pattern in our beliefs and how we can deconstruct them. Now, let me give you a little bit of backstory. That part of the work that I do is I go into the prison system here in Colorado. I work in a federal prison system a couple times a week. We're working with felons. Some of them are on their way out the door imminently within the next 2 weeks to the next 5 years, and some of them they're going to be housed there for the rest of their days. So we're in varying states of why they're sitting in front of me. However, I know why I'm sitting in front of them, and I'm looking to curb recidivism. I like to reach people, and if you're going to go back out on the streets, let's rethink some of those things that made you ugly dance before, because we don't want to see that ugly dance anymore. Thank you. So I was with one of my groups at the penitentiary, this federal level penitentiary. They've done some nasty stuff, However, I don't get their backstory. I don't ask for it, and unless they just blurt it out, which most of them in that group have not, I don't know anything about them other than you're at this level of custody, then that's raw. So the place that I provide, though, is a safe space to talk about reprogramming that mind, because whatever you installed in there, or that was installed that you didn't reconstruct or deconstruct, and then reconstruct, is probably why you're here. So that's why we talk. Well, because it was a holiday coming up, it was Thanksgiving coming up, a couple of weeks ago when we were talking about this, one of the dudes asked me, he's adorable, he's tatted up and he's dangerous. I'm not telling you I want to pack this little Scooby up and take him home with me or anything. However, he's got a very sweet, innocent, felon spirit. He really does. Housed in all of that, tat and weird stuff, there's just a very sweet innocence about him. And I have a great deal of compassion for that, because, dude, wow, this is a hard way to spend, a lot of your next days, possibly forever, I don't know. But he looked at me, we were talking about the holidays, and I had been speaking to them about putting assignment on things and how we care and why we care and what we consider our priorities. What do you consider to be the priorities of being a man? How is that defined for you? What do you consider the priorities for a woman, for family, for your job, for how you're identifying in all these different areas? And then as I was speaking to them the last time that I saw them, I was saying, however you celebrate a holiday, if you do, whatever those priorities are that assign you being in here versus out there and not with your family celebrating or whatever, how's that driving for you? And we kind of talked about that. And because I'm single and I don't really celebrate holidays the same way traditionally that I used to for the first 50 years of my life, I celebrated the holidays very traditionally in the United States that one would expect to, with family and, doing the whole shtick. However, since I went through divorce and estrangement from that whole entire way of life, I really don't do that celebration the same way. I do a very quiet, me celebration, and I do whatever I care to do, the way that I care to do it. However, I rarely share that with anybody else. Any of the traditional holidays are not done traditionally by me anymore. They're done more, traditionally of what my tradition of me dictates. And that can vary, from year to year, and usually it does. So anyway, this little guy, he's violent and he's got some interesting questions. However, I'm always curious about the mind of someone that comes up and, asks a very compassionate question in the midst of the United States Penitentiary in Colorado. I'm going to be, taken aback with it, that he said, well, Miss Kate, what are you doing for the holiday? And I said, well, I do what I want to do. I'm going to cook, because I enjoy cooking, and I'm going to go for a hike. That's generally what I do, unless I am, drawn to something else. And he said, well, don't you get lonely? And, aren't you lonely at the holidays? And I said, Interesting. I said, well, no. I said, not specifically at the holidays, because I changed my standard of living of not feeling lonely any day of the year. Then I'm not going to feel especially lonely on Thanksgiving or Christmas or my birthday or anybody else's any other day of the year. I'm not going to feel more, inclined at a holiday than less inclined. And he said, why is that? And I said, well, it actually, interesting that you'd ask, it ties in with the expectations, what my thoughts are, what my programming would be, what my, memory would be about what a holiday should be. And because I've deconstructed that, and reconstructed what it means to me, what my priorities are on a daily basis and what my priorities are on a holiday particularly, then no, I don't feel lonely. And he said, well, how is that? And I said, well, it's because in the past, it was dictated to me that this is what a holiday looks like. This is what you should be doing. This is what you are doing. This is your baseline norm. And it was for so many years, and I went along with it. And when I got divorced and had to really face, some very real thoughts and real, identities in me that were in total crisis with, we hate this. This is not good. We don't like this. Then when that was all falling apart, as I was resurrecting and rebuilding me, I decided that everyday me has a different standard, and it doesn't matter whether it's a holiday or not, what day of the year it is, that my baseline standard is that I meet my need for me and my community of me, and I don't hang out with people that degrade me, humiliate me, make fun of me, or help me be my least, most brilliant me. And I don't care to be in a community where that's encouraged, that we do this to one another to stay trauma bonded and stay stuck in old patterns, because that's what we're used to. And I choose to no longer be too afraid to reach outside of that and say, well, if I don't want to do that, then what do I want to do? Well, I investigate every day the ways that help me be a more brilliant me, and I hang out with people who encourage themselves to be more brilliant versions of themselves and me, and I exchange that way. And because those are limited people, really, truly they are. Most people just want to stay glommed up in what feels comfortable and kind of grumble about it in the background or in the foreground, depending on how, rangy they want to be. Then I find that, I'm alone a lot. However, I'm always meeting my need of nourishing me. And the memory, excuse me, of what that used to look like on a daily basis, and the memory of what it used to look like on a holiday or something, really is irrelevant, because any sadness that I have felt since I separated from that way of life was in grieving the fact that that was how I celebrated holidays, and needed to grieve the fact that there were many years seemingly lost in that understanding. However, there's celebration in knowing that I don't do that anymore. And so anytime that I would really be drawn back into a feeling of loss or sadness or loneliness or something along those lines, that is really me needing to revisit a part of me that is grieving perhaps, or needs to be reminded that, oh yeah, you're not alone. You're alone from that. However, let's pull into the, logic and the heart space align together with understanding that yes, we weren't really getting what we needed over there. Just because there was a Christmas tree, a turkey, a ham, and smiles, there were also backstabs and sneers, jeers, and discomfort all over the place from my personal story. And so, are we really missing that, or are we missing that we need to come back here and remember that, yeah, that really wasn't how that was. Let's not paint a pretty picture or cozy back into an old feeling because that's more comfortable. Let's go ahead and dig into the discomfort of having to speak the truth about this, which is that loneliness, when I'm feeling it, has nothing to do with who's in front of my face. It has to do with some memory, some idea, or some wish, hope, dream, Dusty Springfield kind of crap of wishing, hoping, and praying that, it wasn't that way. And perhaps have, a moment of grief. Sure, have that. Dig into it. and come to the integration part is that it wasn't that way. There wasn't a sense of that family, that community that I always wanted anyway. And if I'm longing for something, that's not really missing. That's longing perhaps to come back to me and understand that my community begins with me. And because of the standard that I choose to hold for myself and for the people around me, that you have to have a better standard for you so that you can hold one with me. And together, if we are reaching to, bring out the best in one another, then we're bringing that community that I choose to be involved in. And if we're allowing ourselves to slip or really wishing for the worst parts of us, we're trauma bonding, and that's something else. And it's more comfortable sometimes, especially at the holidays, when that seems like, the thing to do is to go back to that herd thinking or that groupthink or that old identity. When we're pulling up and out and into something new, it can be easier to fall back into that. However, when I bring my frontal lobe forward to that and say, look, heart, mind, let's get this together and get it in line, that some part of me is needing to be reminded that that wasn't meeting the need of community and family and that feeling of comfort and home and soft place to fall anyway. It already wasn't doing that. So let's not forget that. And let's pull into what's really most necessary right now might be to have the reminder call to, hey, all parts of me, hear me whenever I say that we are already home, we're already in our safe place to fall, and we're already 11:11 here with the community of us. We're integrated in here, and we align with other people who are also integrated with what they are as well. And maybe they're not physically in our presence at the moment. However, I would much rather feel a momentary loneliness, sadness, or longing or grief, momentary, because it really doesn't last that long at this point. I would rather feel that momentary lapse and absolutely meet the need of me that is calling out for that to be met and deal with it than to trade going in to be with other people. I got an invitation for Thanksgiving this year. I had several places I could be, and I'm not willing to trade my whole day, squish that through an old story that's how you do it, because being with family and friends or being with people that love you, just putting a check in the block really isn't doing it. It's just confirming an old story, an old way to be, and an old identity and an old vibration that might come up from time to time because it's kicked up across, the United States. It's kicked across because, that's just what time of the year it is. That doesn't mean that I answer it there. It means that I see it and I observe it and I answer it here to say, yeah, I could trade, a whole day of being able to meet my own need and do as I care to do that really invigorates and empowers me, or I could go back there and meet a memory that's just passing through, that's just checking in and saying, hey, did you want to try me again? Oh, no, thank you. I already know what you are. Thank you anyway. And I'll take the me that was wondering about that and excuse the memory and take the part of me and say, yeah, we don't put up with that. We don't settle for that. We don't put a check in the block because I'm worth that. And so are the other people that I don't want to be a drag on anybody's occasion, sitting there thinking, yeah, I guess this will just do. They may or may not have the standard. However, I do. And if I know that, then I'm not really supporting them in a very clean space any more than they're offering me a clean reason to be there. So one of us needs to understand that, and I'm the only one that can understand it from my perspective. Excuse me, and open up my throat chakra and my mind and my heart to be very clear that the clearest place that I can be is to stand in the sovereignty and understand that sometimes the memory will visit me and cause momentary longing or loneliness or whatever. However, it's a much faster process to deal with that, to grieve, to do whatever I need to do, to excuse the memory and say thank you. I appreciate the reminder that there's somewhere inside of me that's questioning that and needs to be reminded of our new identity and where we truly are, which is right here, integrated with the family of me, the family of what is aligning with me, and physical people become less important. You know, when I'm meeting that at that level of integrity and that level of vibrational experience, then I find the match for that in the woods perhaps, or in watching a movie while I'm lying on my couch, or whatever it is, cooking in my kitchen, happy as a clam to be cooking what I like to eat, you know, a special meal, and in doing activities that really nourish me and feed me, far better than having vain conversation where I'm going to have to, you know, take a hit of, oh, that's some ignorant stuff coming out of that person's face. Oh, well, you know, please forgive them. Why bother? You know, I can be allowing them to be whoever they are and whatever they are without the judgment, without the possible blip in the matrix in their world, that I just keep, you know, my divine matrix over here clean and out of that. And then I'm nourishing me in a different way. And no, you know, to the young man at the penitentiary, he didn't get that full speech. However, it was needing for me to clarify in my own head, to answer him of my standard is not to just take people because I get lonely. Lonely is a transitory state. It needs to be. And when I understand that it can be, and I have the ability to move the loneliness outside of me to, that's not me, thank you. Any part of me that is yearning to understand that differently, it's going to be met by me, not by going out here and asking somebody else to please fill the void of the lonely in me that can only be met by me. It's going to be super frustrating, and it's going to really, you know, shut down that part of me that had a question to begin with and make them think that, oh dear, you know, we're always going to be out here looking. Can you pay attention to me? The answer is yes. I can pay attention to me and answer the question of what would be lonely in me, that I would need somebody else out here to answer that for me. And again, he didn't get that full explanation. He just got the, no, I don't do, you know, I don't feel lonely anymore, because I felt the loneliest when I was in a room of 16 people that didn't know me and didn't want to know me, and that I knew them too well to know that this is a, you know, a kiddie pool, and I really would rather be swimming in the ocean. Thank you. And there's nothing wrong with being a kiddie pool. However, we're an ill match to be here. So no, I don't feel lonely on a holiday or any other day. And when I do feel lonely, no matter what day it is, then I meet that need, and it's not to fill it with people ever. Going out into the world as a hungry ghost is asking for problems. So anyway, I hope you're well, no matter what part of the day you're in, and that you get within your skin, because your divine will answer you just fine. Even if you're feeling lonely, even if you feel a longing for a home that you can't identify, the home is in here, is what I would say to you. So anyway, get inside, because in your skin, because your divine is absolutely fine, and it does answer where home is every single time. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you again next time. 1717 is an 88. Absolutely fabulous. Take care. See you again next time. Bye.